It's time now for the political analysis of Fromm and Fuller. Al Fromm, former political advisor to President Bill Clinton, and Craig Fuller, former political advisor to both Presidents Ronald Reagan and George H.W. Bush. Good morning, all. Al, it's been an interesting week, and it's not over with yet, but a couple of days ago, the Michigan primary took place, and we have some results on that. But in the meantime, we've also had this incredible flow of news about the Supreme Court hearing the Donald Trump immunity case. And we have a minority leader who is now stepping down. What's your take on this?
I'd add one more thing to your list. Yesterday, Nikki Haley went on the air with an ad that doesn't mention the Republican Party. It's an ad that attacks both Biden and Trump. And the other thing that happened, and these two things may or may not be related, is that No Label said it will have a convention next Friday, March 8th, on its presidential nominating prospects. It may be that they'll announce they don't have a ticket, or it could be something else. But if you take all these factors together, they just raise the already enormous stakes of this 2024 election. Now, why would I say that? Well, as Craig's friend Judge Luddick reminds us regularly, as long as Trump and his cronies are around, our fragile democracy teeters on a knife's edge. Trump is an existential threat to our democracy. The Michigan primary shows that Trump's going to be the nominee. He controls the party. I heard that he controls like about 90% of the members of the RNC. So even if the voters didn't do it, he'd probably arrange to rig the convention so he's the nominee. He's going to win it easily. On the Democratic side, Biden had a pretty strong showing. But there was a sizable 100,000 voters who voted for the do not commit ticket, and it is that's pretty substantial. It was a big protest vote, a lot of it led by the Arab American community who are against his policies in Gaza. Just real quickly to put that in perspective, though, Michigan always has a high uncommitted vote, and this is how the cable networks sometimes are a little deceiving. It was about 11% in 2020. It was 13%. Or in 2012 when Obama was running his second term, and it's about 13% this time. So that's a little difference, but not enormous. But if you listen to cable, you heard that it was over 100,000 this time and only 20,000 in 2012, and that's right. But the difference is that Biden got 5 times as many votes as Obama this time. Biden got 623,000. Obama got 175,000. Or not, that's about 4 times as much. So, it's a little deceiving to say that is enormously out of line. A lot more people just participated in the primary, but nonetheless, it showed what those results showed is that both candidates have weaknesses. This is an important swing state. It's likely to be decided by how the double haters go. Right now, in a two-way race, they look like they're going to Biden, but with so many double haters, I mean, a quarter of the Republican vote said they didn't want Trump. That means that there's a path open for a third-party candidate, not to win, but to be a spoiler. And that is a big deal. Let's go to the next thing. We already know that Trump has virtual control of the House through the Speaker. McConnell's leaving. McConnell is sort of an obstacle to Trump, and that makes it much more likely that Trump, if he's successful in the White House, will also control the Senate. Because one of the reasons McConnell left is that The Senate's moving away from him. Senate Republicans are moving away from him. I saw a story this morning that said that McConnell has a foreign trip for all the new members. And in this last class, not one of those members has voted with him on any foreign policy issue. It's the new Trump isolationist party, and I can't believe, despite all the speculation of who it's going to be, that they're not going to have a candidate that'll be pretty strong, particularly if Trump is the nominee. Now, McConnell, says he's against Trump, but the reality is, in the last several years, he's culprit number 2 when it comes to undermining democracy. Mm-hmm. The way he blocked Merrick Garland's nomination to the court, denying the elected president the right to have his nominee for the court heard, skews democracy. And then he went against the same, absolutely 180 degrees from the principle he announced then when he rushed through Amy Coney Barrett for Trump. Basically, that allowed Trump and the Trump appointments to control the court. And then when he had a chance to end Trump's public career by voting to impeach him or to convict him and getting other Republicans to do it, if he had done it, Trump would have been convicted. But he voted to acquit him, and then he goes to the floor and says he's guilty. I mean, how two-faced can you be? Nonetheless, what comes next, as bad as McConnell is likely to be worse in the Republican Party. Now let's look at the court. I think the court will rule against Trump in this immunity case, but it's already helped him immeasurably just by taking it up at a very slow pace, putting it sort of on a normal calendar. Probably won't have a decision until the end of June. And so it doesn't matter what the decision is. He probably has now delayed the January 6th case till after the election. And remember, Trump's strategy is justice delayed is justice avoided. His appointments to the court can say, well, look, we voted against him on this important case. But at the same time, they helped him because if it doesn't happen before the election and he's elected, he's going to call the Justice Department off. I mentioned briefly the No Labels Convention and the Haley ad. I mean, it's, if you've listened to her throughout the last month, she runs the Grumpy Old Men ad. This just goes a little further, and it doesn't happen to mention that she's a Republican, which is interesting. Now, she'd probably have trouble getting on the no labels ticket because I believe it is 47 of the 50 states have sore loser laws, which say you can't run in a party primary and then run in a general election as an independent. But they're probably of varying strength, and who knows whether they would ever be enforced. But what does that mean? Just think about it. Trump controls the House. If he wins the election, he's going to control the Senate. He already has inordinate influence over the Supreme Court. Doesn't speak very well for the separation of powers going into the future. But we also know that Trump probably can't win a two-way race. As I've said many times, there's a majority, a small one, but a small pro-democracy majority. But because of his cult vote, he would almost certainly win a three-way race. And so to me, what this week means is that it's even more important than ever that we have a straight up and down vote, democracy or not, in the 2024 election.
Craig, this is a lot to unpack. I will give you free range to take it as you will.
Those were the exact words I had in mind, but let me walk through it quickly. We can come back in more detail. First of all, in many ways, I thought Michigan, at least from the Republican standpoint, it was kind of a continuation of South Carolina. We pretty much knew that Trump was going to win it. But a sizable number of people showed up to vote against him by voting for Nikki Haley, and a sizable number of Republicans just didn't vote, which I actually think spells real trouble for him going forward. And so, yes, he won another state. Yes, he won more delegates. But there are a group of Republicans, I associate myself with them, who do not want to see Trump elected as president and are looking for an alternative. That effort may fail. The question is what happens after that. I, for one, think what Nikki Haley is doing is trying to prove herself as the candidate who can win in a general election, to see whether she can gather more support this time around. But this is really, I think, posturing for what comes next. I want to come back to that in a minute. With respect to McConnell, I'm a little more generous. I mean, it's been a 4 decades career. He's done a lot of things. He was a very determined person to change the face of the judicial system, or at least the makeup of the system in the United States. And he pursued that, and he pursued it aggressively, and he did in the end, through the strategy he employed with the Supreme Court, he ended up with 2 more conservative justices than might otherwise have been the case. And people can judge him for that. Some celebrate it, some fault him for that. I wish he had done this sooner. I think, the octogenarians have got to at some point step down, and I wish they'd do it or consider doing it before they turn 80 in these really very demanding and important roles. But we move to a next generation, and it's already clear in the media that it's going to be a pretty competitive contest, as Al suggests, ultimately shaped definitely by what happens in the election. The court cases, the Supreme Court's efforts here, I sort of had an epiphany about that. First of all, I, as we've talked about before, I think there's a way to reach the conclusion that he probably shouldn't be on the ballot given the insurrection, but that may be a bridge too far. I do think he should not be somehow immune from acts that and the issues he's being charged with. But I'm not sure that any of this, it helps to resolve all of this close to the election. And that's sort of the epiphany. In fact, I think if Donald Trump experiences anything other than defeat at the polls, he will simply stay around and try to run the Republican Party, which will give us, years, if not a decade more of this frustration. And so I, for one, actually think that the legal process should be pursued. They should do what they can do within the time frame they have to do it. But I would, at this stage, especially if it's a head-on-head contest, which I surely hope it is, I think we need to go to the polls and Donald Trump needs to be defeated. At that point, there's the chance then to rebuild a Republican Party that's more relevant in the debate and the discussions these days. And I think in that regard, Nikki Haley won't be the only voice, but she'll be an important voice in that process. If anything short of a defeat of Trump happens, he stays on the playing field and frankly wreaks havoc with the Republican Party.
Al, you paint a very chilling picture of a third-party threat, especially given Haley, but also RFK Jr. is flirting with the Libertarian Party. I mean, this really could have some impact, as you've been saying for quite some time, but what does a Biden campaign do about this?
Well, I'm not sure there's a lot the Biden campaign can do except be as strong as possible. I mean, look, if Joe Biden were 60 years old and not 81, and if he were strong enough to take advantage of his record, which has been excellent, this probably wouldn't be a problem. But the problem is very simple. In 2020, 44,000 votes were the difference between Joe Biden being president and Donald Trump being president. 3 states, Wisconsin, Georgia, Arizona, If those three states had flipped 44,000 votes, total, all three, it would have gone to the House and Trump would have been elected. I mean, part of the problem is that the popular vote, which Democrats have now won 7 out of the last 8 times, is no longer automatically honored in a presidential election. I doubt we're going to fix that in the very near future, but it is a challenge to the democracy. And it's no doubt that this election, like 2020 and 2016, are going to be decided in 5 or 6 states. Think about Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Georgia, Arizona, probably throw in Nevada this time. But those states made the difference. And in 2016, Jill Stein got 30,000 votes in Wisconsin, and Trump won by 22,000. The same thing was true. He won by 10,000 in Michigan. I don't know what she got, but she got more than that. And Gary Johnson, running as the Libertarian Party candidate, got even a bigger chunk. So third-party candidates have real impact in an tight election, and every indication is that in these swing states, they're all margin of error. So even a 2 or 3 or 4 point, or 1 point in some case, performance by a third-party candidate is likely to skew the election. And I believe it doesn't matter whether the candidate is a Republican or Democrat. That candidate will wind up taking more votes from Joe Biden than Donald Trump. Why do I say that? I say that because if you look at the Trump vote, it is a Trump vote. It's a cult vote. Trump supporters support Trump. If you look at the Biden vote, it's an anti-Trump vote. By 62 to 31 in the last NBC poll, Biden voters said they're voting more against Trump than they are for Biden. If you're voting against Trump and you don't really like Biden, and there's a third-party off-ramp, a substantial percentage of voters are going to take it.
Yeah.
That's why I'm so concerned about a third-party candidate. Again, if it were an ordinary year, if Nikki Haley were the Republican candidate and we had the same circumstances, I wouldn't sit here fretting about it.
Yeah.
But with Donald Trump, the existential threat to democracy, likely to be the beneficiary of a third-party candidate, I'm awfully worried about that.
Greg, you have the last word.
Well, I think Al is right to be worried, and I too am worried about it. However, I think I say to my friend Al, we're doing better than you might think, in the sense that it was only a few months ago that we had Senator Manchin with a very high national profile, former Governor Hogan with a pretty good national profile, toying with the No Labels group, toying with the idea of running. Former Senator Lieberman is kind of the darling of the No Labels group, not so much as a candidate, but as a spokesperson. And my reading of the tea leaves is all their engagement with No Labels has been greatly diminished. Manchin says he won't be a candidate. Hogan says he's running for the Senate. So more progress has been made. And the reason I think it's been made is because Al and Democrats and a number of Republicans have all band together to say, this, folks, is dangerous, whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, whether you're, just as a voter or if you're a donor, if you're a major donor, if you support this independent candidate, you are basically putting Donald Trump back in the White House. And if that's your mission, so be it. But if that's not what you want to do, then you really need to ensure this is a two-person race, a head-to-head race that settles the question.
Yeah.
And I think so. You ask, what do we do about it? I think Biden has to run a strong campaign. Biden has to run Biden's campaign, and people have to, who are inclined to look around, have to basically be told politely, not this year. Don't fund it. Don't vote for him. Stick with this two-party system. One party, my party, which needs to get rebuilt after the election, in my view.
Let me just say one more thing. I agree with Craig. No labels has been diminished because, in the sense that their two most likely candidates have decided to pursue other paths. But what I said before is the most important thing. It doesn't have to be a major candidate. It can be a couple of points or a point. And if a third party candidate got a point more in Arizona, Wisconsin, and Georgia last time, Donald Trump would be in the White House. So it doesn't have to be a major candidate. Well, here's what we're doing about it. There's a group called the Committee to Save Our Republic. Both of us have been involved in it a little bit. And we're asking all potential third-party candidates to take what we call the no spoiler pledge. And here's what the no spoiler pledge is. It basically says, if by July 1st, first of all, that you're running to be president, not to be a spoiler, and if by July 1st, you're not on enough ballots to win, get 270 electoral votes, and you're not running first or second in at least 4 or 5 states in major accredited polls, then you're going to withdraw your name from the ballot in the 5 or 6 swing states that will decide the election to avoid being a spoiler. There's really not much we can do except make that argument. But this election could be so close that even a minor candidate, a throwaway vote, could make the difference.
Well, we really do have to leave it there. Al Fromm, Craig Fuller, thank you so much indeed. We will see you next week.